you do, or what piece of expertise do you have to share? And Liz graciously offered up her time. Liz is working with world schooling newbies, if you will, those that are just starting out, and she's helping to facilitate the confidence that new world schooling families need. And not only just the confidence, but the information, the resources, the materials, and so forth. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. And I guess we're just going to jump right in. Just to be totally upfront, this is called 6 Ways to World School, and Liz has prepared information for you. So if you're a newbie, please tune in. And if you're watching live, ask questions in the chat. And if you're watching this in replay, please do put hashtag replay in the comments. So with all that, Liz, welcome, and go ahead and spend a moment or two to introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lainey. Yes, this is definitely useful for newbies, but also people who've been world schooling for a while and are still trying to figure out the best ways to educate their kid, because, there's many different ways and it depends on the kids. So a little bit about me. I'm a world schooling mom of 13-year-old twin girls, digital nomad, entrepreneur, and I love to travel. I've traveled to nearly 50 countries in my life, many of them before I had kids. When my twins were born in New York, and we spent the first 7+ years of their life in the Seattle area, where I am currently. So over 6 years ago, I got really tired of the rat race. I was really burned out from running a really intense children's business. I know you think that children's businesses are fun, but sometimes they could be really stressful. So I pulled my twins out of school. Brick and mortar school was not working well for them at the time. And I really wanted to raise my girls to be global citizens, just from all the stuff that I learned previously as a traveler. So I sold my business. We started traveling in 2016 and world schooling. It's been an incredible experience. We've lived in 20 different countries. We've learned so much about different cultures. We've, eaten delicious food, had many amazing adventures out in nature or in big cities or small towns. We've visited historical places and archaeological sites. And most of all, we met a lot of interesting people, locals as well as other world schoolers, digital nomads and expats. And now we have friends from all over the world, like you, Lainey. We met you in Peru finally, and
Mexico.
And Mexico, yeah, 2 places. And so I just want to mention before I get too much into it, I'm trying to inspire people to world school, and one of the main people who inspired me was you, Lainey. And prior to us, launching our lifestyle, I think I spent like a year and a half. It did take me a while to sell my business, but I was following you on Facebook and wherever else you were in the world. So thank you for being such a shiny, world schooling example and an advocate for so long. Again, I think I discovered you like 8 years ago, and you had already been doing it for a while. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, you're still plugging along, which is amazing. Even though your son Miro is now an adult, it's great that you're still in, I guess we're forever world schoolers, right?
Right. We're always learning from the world, and it is a lifestyle. Yeah. I'm going to ask you next about the education and the learning. But before we do, you mentioned something, and I was wondering if you could give a definition of what that is. You said that you're interested in raising global citizens. What is that?
Yeah, I think it's important, especially in today's day and age, with so many people becoming really polarized and nationalistic, and media has a lot to do with it. And I do have a degree in mass communication. And I worked in media for many years. So I think, people often will follow the news channel or influencers or whatever, who will kind of parrot back what their beliefs are. And I really want my girls not to get sucked into that and sucked into the American lifestyle, or becoming American princesses and being really into consuming things and keeping up with the Joneses and, wanting to be like the Kardashians. I joke about that, but, I mean, that's kind of some of what's going on. It's just there's so much pressure to conform and to buy things and to have a nice car and all that stuff. So obviously I was getting sucked into that lifestyle, but then when I started traveling and, basically was a backpacker, it really opened my eyes. It changed my perspective. I saw how other people lived and, and I became a global citizen. I mean, we're all still evolving, but I really wanted that for my girls because I saw that they were, even at 5, 6, 7 years old, kind of getting sucked into it. And mommy, how come we don't have a big house full of toys like our friends do? And it's just really important, I think, to know about other perspectives and cultures. And I think it helps you just be a better human being and have more empathy for other people and know more about what's happening in the world. So you can kind of have more of a bird's eye picture of the problems in the world and maybe be a force of change, to improve things in the world. So I don't think you can really do that if you're really still in your little bubble, staying in your hometown your whole life. And again, it's great for other people. I'm not trying to force everyone to become a world schooler, but for those who think kind of the same, that it's important to kind of widen increase your bubble and know what's going on, not just in your town or state or country, but, around the whole world. And I've always had this philosophy that while we're, alive and here on this planet, we might as well see some of it. So 6 years on, I think my girls, especially one of them who's really into traveling, she's definitely a global citizen.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you for that. All right, so let's just kind of dive into the deep and dirty. So tell me a little bit about the education or the learning process for your girls while they've been traveling. And maybe you can share your experience and then maybe expand as to some of the alternatives that are out there for people that are just considering world schooling.
Sure. I mean, again, when I talk about world schooling, I talk about myself as well, not just my kids, because we've learned so much over the years by, traveling and world schooling, also through the work I've done in alternative education. And now, I'm really happy to share what I've learned. So more families can pursue this amazing global lifestyle and become global citizens and trailblazing families. So my kids have learned in so many different ways. They learned, especially by learning by experience, which we call life learning or unschooling or child-led learning or self-directed learning. There's many labels, I guess, on that. They also previously, before we started traveling, attended a preschool that I owned, which was part of a large indoor children's play cafe that I launched north of Seattle. So we're big fans of play-based learning and learning through experiences. I became a big fan of Peter Gray way back when. And my girls have attended a couple different local schools for short periods of time in Peru and Mexico. I've also had nannies help and other tutors teach them Spanish. And for the past few years, they attended an online global school that I helped launch. So that's our background. And from all this experience and all that we learned from the many other world schooling, homeschooling, digital nomad, and expats we're connected with. I just learned a lot. So, I also was a co-host for a homeschooling global summit, and I interviewed lots of other alternative education, experts. So we can talk about the most popular. I have 6 most popular methods for educating world school kids. Again, there's many ways to do it. There's no one right way. It depends on each child, depends on the family, your values, also what your kids' future plans are, whether or not they want to attend university, what they want to do in the future. So, if your kids are currently attending a traditional brick and mortar school, I know that it's really scary to pull them out and try different ways to learn. I've definitely been there. I had the same doubts as many of you had. I remember listening to Lainey talk about unschooling, thinking about like, what the heck? Initially, I was like, oh my gosh. So I had doubts as well. I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to ruin their lives or at least their education? And, pulling them out of school is just kind of a scary thing. But after 6 years of seeing my kids learn so much about this amazing world, through our travel experiences and also the various other ways they've learned, and also due to the hundreds of other world schooling families we've met, including older teen world schoolers and grown world schoolers that we have met, like Lainey, your son Moreau. I'm now very confident that world schoolers are amazing. They grow up to be mature, worldly, capable, intelligent, and I believe better prepared for the increasingly global world and future than traditionally schooled kids. So yeah, let's just jump into it. And first note that I will be talking about different options in general. I may mention some programs, but I'm not going to have an exhaustive list of schools and programs. I'll be compiling a list in my Facebook group, and I think Lainey also has a nice big list somewhere in your group and also on your website. So I do plan to interview many of these World School service providers. So check back with me in the coming weeks and months. And do note that many families start in one place and kind of transition as they learn more and their confidence grows on different ways of learning. We parents get to know our kids better once we pull them out of school. And over time, we can better figure out how they learn best. So the first option is homeschooling them yourself. Homeschooling is basically school at home, or in our case, on the road. And instead of being teacher-led, it's parent-led. So the parent is a teacher. It's do-it-yourself, DIY. It's kind of, parents are figuring out the curriculum themselves, or they buy a curriculum and ask the kids to do the learning work. In the old days, if you were homeschooling in the 80s, you would send money to a company that would send you a box of curriculum, lots of books and worksheets. So we call this box curriculum. Much of it at the time was religious in nature. And so I know also some world schooling families who still stay connected to the school back in their hometown, and they report back to them. They take the textbooks with them and worksheets and take pictures of their work or scan it in and email it back to the teacher. For me, that sounds a bit odd because to follow a set curriculum when, you're supposed to be learning about the American Civil War, but you're at Machu Picchu, or the Panama Canal. And I think you should learn about Machu Picchu and the Incas, not the American Civil War at that time. And there's just so much you can learn by being out in the world, about the culture that you're in, or the history and the engineering. How did they make Machu Picchu or the Panama Canal, the marine biology, all the things you can learn while traveling. So, but instead the families who have this curriculum, they're reading through the textbooks about something else. So that's definitely not the type of learning that my kids enjoy. I've tried to say, hey, let's spend a little time learning about this or that, and let's sit down and read this. And they're like, no, we're in Bali, and let's go outside and check out the animals and the monkeys, and, look at this cool temple and pick shells at a beach. So I've kind of relaxed, obviously it happened to me when I'm trying to push some learning, and then they're like, no, let's go do this instead. So I learned to follow their lead. And then sometimes traditional curriculum is online, which is, similar to the traditional school system and the previous box curriculum. Often these traditional schools are accredited. So when, if you're planning to go back to the school system, it might be a smoother transition. Again, I'm not a fan of this option, but it's an option. And it's trying to get your kids to do academic work when you're traveling, fine. But, if they return to the school system, many kids have pulled out of the school system for a year or two and not done anything, and it went back to their grade, whatever grade they were supposed to be in, and they were fine. In fact, I did that twice with my girls. We were back in the States for short periods of time, and my mom was like, we're not homeschooling them. We're busy, put them back in school. And they were fine. They went back into the school system, and they weren't like super behind in anything. They kind of got frustrated with all the busy work that the teachers wanted them to do, but they were fine. So it's not going to ruin your kids. And, the schools have a curriculum that was some administrator, many years ago, put together, and it hasn't really changed in the last 50 years. And the world with technology and everything is changing. So I do think it's a bit outdated. But again, if you're really concerned, if you're only going to do a gap year and really concerned, you can follow some type of curriculum. And then, I think what the interesting thing is knowing a little bit about how the schools are set up, that they're, in the past kind of set up to train factory workers, and then now corporate worker bees. So it's a little different because Worldschooling families, we tend to be a bit more entrepreneurial and wanting our kids to learn a little bit above and beyond being an obedient worker. So keep that in mind too. Anyway, so some families will homeschool math and language arts and then unschool the rest. And I think that's a good compromise or a mix of styles. Many Worldschooling parents will piece together a hodgepodge of online programs by using free or low-cost programs like Khan Academy or Duolingo or Code Combat, whatever the kids are into. So that's really great. And, there are literally hundreds of learning apps out there and a gazillion YouTube videos about every conceivable topic. You can get books on Kindle. You can use your local library to get books on an app called Libby. Homeschoolers also often work on learning projects out in the real world that the parents choose. They purchase supplies along the way. So there's again, great ways to learn. The downsides, again, is the kids may get disinterested in that type of pushed forced learning. It kind of depends on your kid. They were used to their teacher telling them what to do, and now mom or dad are doing it. So they might do it for a while, especially if they're very obedient children, which mine are not. You might need to bribe them or, really coerce them to get the learning done. Again, which I'm not really a fan of. They're not going to remember a lot of that forced learning. Studies have shown that 90% of what a typical student is forced to learn will get forgotten not long after the test. So, think about what you remember from school, right? Other than things that you are interested in or is practical in your daily lives, you're not going to remember all those facts and figures and things that you had to memorize back then. So why push that on your kids? But again, it depends on your kid and what they want. They may want someone to tell them what to learn and create lots of structure. Others do better with self-directing their learning and pursuing their passions. Homeschooling is a typical place to start, and a lot of families do start there because, that's what they're used to. They know the school system and they think, okay, well, we're going to take you out of school and start traveling, and then we're going to replicate the school system, but, we'll do it while traveling. And it's a safe option. It's within the realm of what a lot of parents understand. And they think I have to be doing lessons and grading them and all of that, taking exams. We have to keep up with the school system. But very quickly, many families realize that it's all it's doing is creating arguments. Again, depends on the kid. And I don't know. Usually homeschooling for a young kid, it shouldn't take more than, an hour or so, maybe 10, 20 minutes per subject. So don't try to push your kids into doing 6-7 hours of school. They don't need it. And I think if you want to do a little bit, fine, but keep it short, depending on their attention span, and then just let them play and explore the world the rest of the day. Plus staying home indoors all day, especially even if you're online, it's, kind of what's the point when you're out there in the world, right? So many families have said they started in this fashion, but as they started traveling, they saw their kids learning so much from the real world with experiences. And sometimes you need to start traveling and to see that. So purchasing a curriculum on this, might be a waste of time, basically. They're not going to remember a lot of it unless they have really amazing short-term memory, but it might take away the joy of Worldschooling. So we're going to go to the second way of Worldschooling, but Lainey, do you have any questions at all or comments?
No, I think you covered it quite well. And I'm also recording it. So I'm typing in the 6 ways. So that'll be entered into the chat. So people will see that when you're finished, of course, because awesome. I'm learning right alongside with you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Lainey. Okay, so the second way we'll talk about, a lot of families will transition to registering with an online school. And these online schools require less time and energy from the parents, but they tend to cost more. Well, some are cheap and maybe free, and others cost a lot, but you kind of get what you pay for. The cheaper ones may require the parents to be more involved with keeping your kids accountable. So there are different types of online schools. Some are traditional and follow a curriculum. They're a similar model to a regular school, but it's just online, meaning they're teacher or curriculum led. Others are more alternative, and some of them are synchronous and others are asynchronous. So the key difference is synchronous learning is scheduled real-time interactions, usually via Zoom or similar. Students need to show up at a certain time, usually with a teacher and a group of other students. This is a more social option. So, but it can be difficult for world schoolers if you're you have other things going on, you're crisscrossing the world, and the classes are in a certain time zone. A lot of them tend to be in the Americas. And I'm really trying to explore other online programs that are in the, Europe, Africa, and Asia time zone, but a lot of the ones I know are in the Americas. So some of them have strict attendance policies, others don't. So it kind of makes it difficult to enjoy some sightseeing or catch a flight. And then synchronous usually costs more than asynchronous, as there's a live teacher or facilitator there. Then asynchronous learning happens on your own time, and it doesn't need scheduling, so it's more flexible, but it's easier to push off and procrastinate. It might require some prodding from mom or dad to make sure the kids get the work done. Again, it depends on how motivated or obedient your kid is. Many of them include testing and getting grades and all that. The asynchronous ones often have pre-recorded video lessons or lots of text to read and some images. The student is to absorb the content and then take a quiz. So this is a less social aspect because they're doing it themselves. They're not really doing it with a group of students, and there's no live teacher there. Some of the options I'll mention that are synchronous, Kubrio, which used to be called Galileo XP and is the online global school that I helped launch, is a good option for world schoolers since it's in 3 different main time zones around the world. It's flexible, it's year-round, it has a mix of asynchronous and synchronous learning. It's probably the most unschooling of this type of offering. There are other online live synchronous programs such as Sora, which is an online project-based high school, but their time zone is in the Americas. Another live synchronous option for 4th to 10th graders, also in the America time zone with live sessions, is Prisma. There's an online school for younger kids called Bina, 4 to 10-year-olds. The time zone is East Coast US to Eastern Europe. So that might be kind of interesting, but I kind of have mixed feelings about little kids taking online classes. I think online learning can wait until they get a little older. But again, I don't know this program very well. I've heard it's good. I haven't done it. Maybe they make it super fun. Who knows? And there's a new Sudbury model that is in the Pacific time zone that I heard, called the Open School for age 5 to 18. So they have virtual or in-person options. And Lainey, don't you know of one that facilitates? Why don't you mention that one?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. It's called The Hub, and it's for 9 to 12-year-olds. And it's basically like a like facilitated self-directed learning community, but it kind of like a democratic school, and they meet online 2 or 3 times a week, and Miro is having a blast and learning so much. So yeah,
and that's in the Americas time zone, right?
America's time zone as well. And they're called The Hub, and it's thehub.community if you want to find out more information about that.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, so I'm investigating more online schools that would be great for world schoolers. I'll include them in my Facebook group for Trailblazing Families, and then and I'm sure Lainey's keeping track too. So the third option is an in-person local schools, like in the country that you are at, local schools. So my girls attended a local school in Peru in the Sacred Valley. And I told them, I don't care what my girls learn as long as they learn Spanish, because it was mostly in Spanish, except for their weekly English class. I did put them also in an Agile Learning Center in Playa del Carmen. It is a little tricky because the administrators administrator didn't speak English. I speak some Spanish, so I was able to, communicate and get my girls registered. Sometimes if you're only there for a few months, you may still have to pay the annual registration fee and the materials fee up front, which can be kind of spendy. So check on that before you decide. My girls had a really nice time at that school in Peru. It was mostly Peruvian kids, and my girls were treated really well, except they did have one problem with a bully. And I've heard from other Worldschooler friends that their kids sometimes get bullied a little bit for being foreigners or, outsiders or whatnot. So I think it really depends on the school. Definitely check reviews. My girls were, again, they were treated like some celebrities when they were there. They were like, they made so many nice friends. And, but then when they attended the Agile Learning Center in Playa del Carmen, which is more of an international area, they were ignored by the other kids, and their Spanish wasn't good enough, to really communicate with them. So that was kind of tough. And also if you're a resident, unless you're a resident of the country, you can't put your kids in a public school. So it's likely private schools that you need to enroll your kids in. Some tuitions are not very expensive. It's $100 to $300 per month per child, but others can be $20,000 and up per year. Some require uniforms that you have to buy, and some start really early in the morning. They have school buses that pick up the kids sometimes at 6 or 7 a.m. I've heard, or 8 a.m. Pretty early. And so it might be a little bit of a shock for Worldschool kids who have been out of the system for a while. Again, they often have curriculum and testing, and but it's great for language acquisition. If you go to one that's in the language that you want. And, the first few months can be really challenging. You're kind of throwing them in the deep end, and sink or swim. So it can be stressful. I think it works really great if your kids are young. It's harder for older kids to learn a new language, but it's not impossible, but it's just a little harder. So, if it's a preschool, kindergarten, or early elementary grades, it's easier to learn a new language. And then, there's less challenging academic work. So it's very effective way, for your kids to kind of be forced to learn the language because they have no other choice, because that's what they're talking. And, unless if you want to go to a bilingual school, but then they'll probably be speaking English or whatever your language is. So I would avoid bilingual schools if language acquisition is your goal or your kid's goal. For us, it was just kind of difficult to manage if you're there short term. I think if you're living someplace for a whole year and you're willing to make the investment of all the registration stuff and the uniforms, or at least for 6 months, this can be a great experience for the kids because, they'll be socializing, they're learning the local customs and the culture, and probably celebrating the holidays there. So, I've heard a lot of good and bad things about this option. It depends on the school. There are alternative schools around the world, such as Montessori's, Agile Learning Centers, Waldorf schools, Sudbury, democratic type schools. So it really depends. So I would just try to, join the local Facebook expat groups, but be warned that a lot of them will recommend the really expensive international schools, because a lot of these parents, they work for corporations, and, they're there for a few years, and they're hoping that their kids will go to university in the US, and to, get corporate jobs. So it might not be the environment that you want to be in, because, as world schoolers, we, again, tend to be a bit more entrepreneurial or freelancers, a bit more free-minded. So just take that with a grain of salt. I mean, this is why I like the alternative school, because they're a little bit more flexible and not so focused on, getting your kids into university right away and the top schools and all that. I mean, again, maybe you guys want to do that. Your family, again, in contrast, you might be hopping around the world. You're going to have a much different, and I would say better, educational experience. From a Worldschooling perspective, if your goal is to continue to travel and explore the world, then, being stationary for a long time and attending a traditional school might not be the right kind of culture that you want. Okay, so option 4, we ready for option 4, is hiring teachers, tutors, and nannies and the like. So I have hired nannies in the past in various destinations we were at. We even had a nanny live with us in 2 different locations, One of them in Medellin, Colombia, this lovely Venezuelan woman. She took my girls to their karate, gymnastics, and cooking classes. She spoke Spanish to them. Another was a local girl in Puebla, Mexico, who lived with us during the pandemic. I was working a lot of the time, and so she was awesome, just speaking Spanish with my girls, cooking 3 meals a day, delicious meals. And she was willing to, hunker down with us kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, and, became part of our family. So we've had language and math tutors come to our Airbnb for an hour or two a week. And then I've met several families who have brought a nanny traveling with them, or they hire a private teacher or tutor to travel with them. They often want this person to have a good, quote unquote, good passport, so they can easily go to the countries that the families want to. So this obviously costs a lot, probably what a teacher makes in your home country. I think that sounds interesting, obviously a bit spendy. I'm wondering if the teacher or tutor is able to teach or facilitate all the different subjects that the kids might want to learn. I think this is a good option when your kids are younger. For older kids, I would recommend online tutors who specialize in the subjects that the kids are interested in. There are programs like Preply, TutorMe, and Cicero Learning. Also another one, which is a bit, this is $10,000 a year, but pretty intense. Yeah, is Pacific Preparatory. And they actually have years of experience, and they do K to 12. They have a variety of experts, like expert tutors in whatever subject. And I think they're pretty flexible with the time zone. They're mostly in the US, but again, they will work with you to figure out a good time when your kid wants to take it. So there are group classes. OutSchool is super popular. My daughter is currently doing an ongoing middle school art class, and she likes it a lot. I mean, it's not very social because they're, sometimes I see the same kids week over week, but often it's different kids. So, but it's great if you, it's more affordable way to get kind of live tutoring and learning. And then you can hire local tutors in the destinations you're at. But if you're not conversant in the local language, there may be a language barrier. The bilingual teachers and tutors are more expensive. I think the online tutors are more efficient. We hired a Spanish tutor while we lived in Buenos Aires, Argentina recently. Even though she lived there, we met her in person a couple of times. But my daughter preferred to do the classes online. So it depends on your kids. One very interesting idea is traveling circus, which is a group of families, I think about 7 or 8 families who travel together with a teacher. Or 2 teachers, I can't remember. So they pool in their funds. I think it's about $600 per student to pay for the teacher's salary and traveling expenses. So then option 5 is Worldschooling hubs, pop-ups, or learning centers and hubs. And Lainey, before I go on, do you have any comments or questions about what I talked about earlier? No? Okay. So we make a point of visiting a lot of Worldschool hubs. Some of them are organized, others are more informal, because we really love connecting with other Worldschoolers. Not all the time, because we also like to immerse ourselves in the local culture, especially if it's Spanish speaking. But once or twice a year, we try to go somewhere where there's other Worldschoolers. So we've attended many popular destinations for Worldschoolers, such as Chiang Mai, Thailand, Bali, Koh Phangan, Thailand, Playa del Carmen, Mexico, where I met Lainey, and actually Peru too. That's pretty popular too. We met there first. San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, Medellin, Colombia, the Sacred Valley in Peru, La Herradura, Spain, Fethiye, Turkey, and Bansko, Bulgaria. That's some of the many places where we met lots of other families. We've attended, sometimes there's an organized hub, as I mentioned, or a learning center. Other times it's very casual, like the parents will post things in a WhatsApp group and try to rally others to sign up. We really liked the Stone Soup pop-up, but they haven't done any for a while since the pandemic. But just to let you know, but the idea, because I'm hoping more people will do this idea, even if they're not doing it, is we were in San Miguel de Allende a few years ago, where about 40 families were there, and we rented a co-working space for 3 days a week. Then Thursday was park day. So we just hung out with the families a lot, and we all lived separately in our own Airbnbs. So it's, an idea where there was a main organizer, but everyone was required, and we all paid a little fee, but everyone was required to contribute something, kind of like what you do at your summits, Lainey. So that was awesome. And it was a month long. And yeah, so I'm hoping that to find more similar groups. We were hoping to go to Guatemala with the Stones group, but then COVID blocked us at the border. Literally, we were in our car and we couldn't cross the border. But I'm really hoping that more people will do this idea. And of course, we've attended some summits. It's a great way to meet other world schoolers, especially newbies or experienced world schoolers. I highly recommend Lainey and Moreau's Project World School Family Summit. We went to it in Mexico, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and it was amazing. So Lainey and Moreau also host the teen retreats that I'm hoping to send my kids when we can kind of figure out our travel things, wherever you're going to be, have them. And there used to be another summit that ran for a few years, but they dissolved due to the COVID, and they're kind of busy doing other things. But we've gone to some of these. So thank you, Lainey, so much for keeping yours going. I mean, I know you had to pause for a couple of years during the pandemic, but thank you for reviving it. So
we didn't pause at all. We actually did 2020 and then 2021. We didn't do the spring. We actually did a smaller summit in the summer on the coast, and then we started our big summits again in this year. We had a large one, and then next in 2023 will be our 10th summit. Which is incredible. So if people are watching this and they want to come to a summit, I'd say come to the 10th one. It's going to be amazing. And I'm not sure how many more I'm doing after that. We'll see.
What's the date of the 10th
It's
summit?
in Veracruz, and it's look at the top header of this group. It's there. Oh. It's there in the Facebook group. So it's in March.
Well, I mean, again, I hope somebody can take it over for you, because they're awesome.
They're great. They're absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not doing them anymore, but I've done 10.
Yeah,
and we'll see.
You're busy, but again, this idea, I mean, hopefully somebody can keep it going or help you with it, so it's not as much work, because that's what I want to mention is these summits are a lot of work. They're super valuable. Families get together, they learn more about world schooling. They're a lot of fun for the kids who meet each other and have a blast, and they do all these cool activities that they put together. I wouldn't say that they learn anything super academic. If there's any learning, it's usually about the local culture, which is awesome. And they learn about life, of course, and they have lots of fun. The parents really connect with each other. There's so many that I've met at your summit, or others that I've seen again and again around the world. I mean, these become my friends, ongoing world schooler parent friends. So I really appreciate that. And most of them, again, are short-term, 5 days, or some of them are 1 month long. The one that I'm going to in Bansko, Bulgaria, our mutual friend Emmy does, it's 3 months long. So we're actually going for the whole 3 months, I think. So we really loved it last year. My daughter's really into skiing. And I think they're really great for socializing, having lots of fun, learning about the local culture. But as far as the academic stuff, it's not there. I think you've got to look elsewhere, but it's a great way to connect. Now, there is a new player out there called Boundless, and that is pretty spendy. It's they have an option in Portugal and Greece, and they're launching one in Italy. So they have a school for kids 3 to 12, and it's the Scandinavian model. And then they have a co-working space for the parents, and then everyone lives kind of within a walking distance. So, but that's doing very well, actually. Our friend Patty runs Anahata in Mexico, and it sells out whenever she sends an email out saying, okay, our next season is coming. I think she's paused it for a little bit right now. But a lot of them, other than Boundless, I don't think are really meant to make a ton of profit. I mean, I don't know if Boundless is making a lot of profit, but it's more for community. Some of them are being run as a nonprofit. So I would like world schoolers to, when approaching these, to understand their mission is to build community and not just to make a big profit. And we need to have our expectations be like, we're not going to the Four Seasons Hotel, and to be flexible and open-minded, because I think some of the hub owners kind of get a lot of stress having to make everyone happy. So it's most likely a labor of love. And yeah, so I look forward to going to more of these hubs. Like I said, we do it once or twice a year. I actually hosted a teen hub in Fethiye, Turkey for a month last spring. And again, I learned that it's a lot of work to put together stuff. And, you know, some people love doing these physical retreats and summits. And I decided that's not for me. I mean, maybe a retreat when somebody else runs it for me, but you know, all the details. So the sixth and final option, yes, Lainey. So thank you for all your hard work, your labor of love, you know. And
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yes, yes. So we totally appreciate you. So the last option we're going to talk about is unschooling, which is, I guess, one of my favorites. This is a very big one that a lot of Worldschooling parents eventually embrace once they understand Worldschooling and have the confidence to not only force any learning, but to let it happen more organically. And they see what their children are learning just by living in the world and the curiosity that gets sparked. More traveling and Worldschooling families are becoming open to unschooling the longer they travel. I'm a proponent of unschooling, but I prefer the phrase self-directed education or self-directed learning. It sounds a bit more accurate to me, or child-led learning. Some people call it free learning. So there's many ways to call it. So instead of learning with a curriculum or what the teacher or parent wants a child to learn, it's learning through experiences, and the child gets to learn to choose what they want to learn. And again, they can choose academic things as well, but it's just child-led, it's their choice. So it's just, you know, having them learn with passion. And remember, you know, when they learn with passion, they're more likely to do it well and remember it versus things that are forced on them. So for unschooling parents, it's a bit more DIY. But instead of being the teacher, you are the facilitator of what your child wants to learn. So you do need to spend some time with your kids and watch them, especially if they're really young, and really notice what they like to do, because they might not be able to verbalize it yet. Or if they're older, they'll just say, hey, I'm really interested in learning X, Y, and Z. So your job is to help find that class or teacher, you know, whether it's online or real life, or, you know, maybe finding a YouTube video or an app that teaches them how to code or whatever they want to do. So you should be aware of what your kids are interested in and help them with that, and find a resource that can, if you can't teach that. And then when they get older, they get pretty self-directed in their learning and self-organized. They kind of figure out how to do it. They often chat with other teens and learn from each other, or they inspire each other. It could be a bit overwhelming for parents who don't really know how to facilitate. They haven't really deschooled yet. It's really important to deschool, to get deprogrammed of all that you think that education should be. Some say to deschool for 1 month for each year of the school your child has attended. And again, parents also need to deschool. You need just lots of time to just not do anything specific, not do anything really academic for months. Just let your kids play, or play video games or Minecraft, or chat with their friends. You just need to let go and let them get away from the traditional mindset. And eventually they'll get bored of doing that, and getting bored is a good thing, as that's when the magic starts happening, and when they start thinking about things that they might that might interest them, and they'll start trying new things and figuring out their passions. And don't worry if this doesn't happen right away, because every kid is different. And you as a parent, you need to deschool and just let go. Another good thing to do is learning how to strew things. And, you know, like strewing seeds to chickens. And again, it's not forcing them, but you can say, hey, you know, I heard our neighbor is doing this cool thing. Does that sound cool? You want to check it out? The main idea is children are vessels. Children are vessels that need, vessels that need to be filled, not, oh, sorry, I messed that thing up. Children are not vessels that need to be filled, but candles to be lit. So, but it's it can be easy to neglect their interest in their learning. Many adult unschoolers are doing awesome, but I've heard others say that they really wish they were exposed to more when they were younger, or their parents would have taken more part in what they wanted to learn instead of just leaving up to them. And again, Worldschooling is an amazing way. The world strews to them, like Lainey, you often like to say. So they're always seeing new things. They're out in the big world. And I think it's, instead of just living in the same town and doing the same thing over and over again, they will find many things to be interested about. Did you want to say anything, Lainey?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, since you mentioned adult unschoolers or self-directed learners, there's a wonderful documentary by Jeremy
Stuart.
Stewart. I was like blanking on his last name. Yeah, called Self-Taught. And it follows 6 self-directed learners as adults. And actually Miro, my son, is one of the featured people in this. So you'll get the Worldschooling perspective, but it's a wonderful documentary, and it shows the good, the bad, the ugly. So yeah.
I've watched it. It's amazing. I loved especially Miro's part because it was about world schooling. There was a girl, there was a girl who was really into cars, right? I mean, there were some really unique kids, and another one who like knitted giant yarn things or giant things. It was so fascinating.
Scientist, a filmmaker, wonderful things. Yeah. And then somebody who ran a dog training business. So yeah, it's a wonderful exploration to show. I mean, we're not all meant to do the same things in life. And I've always said this. So why do we have the same education?
Exactly. Okay, so anyway, it's important not to neglect your kids. Don't just leave it up to them. I mean, definitely check in with them and facilitate and find resources and stuff. But, your kids will have lots more freedom this way. And, for me, I have a harder time being their full-time facilitator. So I like to get other adults involved to strew, various different online programs and other classes that I sign them up for in real life and the Worldschool hubs and whatnot. But you are their main facilitator or learning coach or cheerleader. So it is hard to do when you're working all the time. It does take time. And again, like I said, I love self-directed education, and I have just tried to find other resources and adult or other teens to help them get introduced to things that I don't know. There's a lot of skills of the future that I'm not really into that my kids are like, oh my gosh, I love 3D modeling. And I'm like, what's that? So anyway, so that's why I seek out other adults that can help. Unschooling does take time to have the confidence to trust that your kids are learning and that it's working. Learning for a family can happen all day long, 7 days a week, their whole lives. So not just when you're studying, but in your daily life, your kids may ask questions. So I often just whip out my phone and we Google it, or we'll jump and look for a YouTube video. And, I'll get my kid at least started in researching it, and we can talk about it during dinner. Or we don't look it up and we ponder out loud to each other, and we try to figure out the answers, that kind of gets your kid to be creative and stuff before we look up the real answer. Or we, do you want to say something?
Oh, no. I was just getting ready for the next question.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Almost done. Just a few other tips, obviously have them help you cook or bake, because they'll be learning about math that way with the measurements. Have them help you shop and deal with money. And if they're older, maybe they can help you with your job or business, see if they want to start their own business, and maybe help them find an internship or apprenticeship and whatever they're interested in. It's a great way for them to learn what they want to do in the future and also what they don't want to do. So yeah, that is some tips there for unschooling.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question is, can you talk a little bit about the ages of the children and the differences between what works for younger kids versus, say, teens or tweens?
Yeah, it's so funny because I hear people say, oh, I want to wait until my kids are older because, when they're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, they're too young, they're not going to remember it. But I think it's a perfect time for them to learn another language, which in today's day and age, it's good to be bilingual or trilingual. So I really wish I would have started Worldschooling earlier, because we started when my girls were 7.5. And, just so they can get a better handle on the language. So when they're young, just being around other kids, playing, just learning through play is the best. Again, I wouldn't force a lot of academic stuff. I mean, yes, if you want to read to them, that's great. If you want to count, do some basic math, but don't really push the academic stuff, and just have them be around lots of experiences. And again, hopefully another language. That's what I would recommend. As they get a little older, maybe 8+, because I didn't actually, my kids didn't have a lot of technology before we started traveling. Because again, I own this indoor children's play cafe. I had lots of imaginative play and a preschool, and there weren't a lot of devices. But later on, I actually became okay with it. And my girls, at 7, 8 years old, got super into Minecraft. They're so good at it, and they build amazing things. And, that helps with strategy and all that. So I kind of like relaxed a little bit on the devices. To a point, I mean, I'm not completely radical unschooler like Lainey. She and I could debate about it, but I do say, let's go to sleep. But yeah, so I think when they're older, they can start choosing what they want to learn, and they'll come to you more. And I think it depends on what they want to do in the future. I mean, my twins are 13 and they are talking about the future, but then I say, hey, you're only 13, you don't have to figure it out now. You can try different things. So yeah, again, I kind of mentioned a little bit on the different options. Some are good for younger kids. I mean, again, if a local school, finding a local preschool, Montessori, whatnot would be great, especially if it's in another language. Online, I think could wait until older, 8, 9, 10. Around that age in their middle school years, they often, really want to make other friends and keep the same friends. So one thing nice about making online friends is they can stay in touch, even if they travel away. And then, as the kids start thinking about university, if they do, I mean, the teen years are for them to, we can talk a little bit later about how to get into university, but they can take a lot of classes online or find a tutor. Or, I have a friend who's her teen daughter's really into marine biology. So they physically travel to places around the world where she can kind of work in a marine biology setting as an intern. And she's starting to teach little kids about marine biology online. So, having them practice those things or get really involved in their passions is what I would recommend. But again, they are lifelong learners, and they might be really into certain things when they're a teen, and then when they're 25, 30, completely change their career. And that is fine, as long as they learn how to learn. And that is why, again, I'm another fan. Another reason to like self-directed learning is they learn how to learn.
Yeah, awesome. I'm with you there. Okay, so you mentioned university. I hear this a lot. I work with teens and parents of teens and tweens, and that tends to be one of the big concerns. So I will ask you, what are your thoughts on world schooling teens and tweens, preparing and thinking about university, if that's the route that they choose?
Sure. So what I'm going to be saying is mostly for Americans, Canadians, British, Australians, whoever has where homeschooling is legal in their country. I mean, there's many countries where it's legal, many other countries where it's a gray area, but the US and other countries have decades of homeschooling history. So many world schooler families who are from countries where homeschooling is illegal, they've left their countries, who no longer have jurisdiction over them. But you also have to think about, the child's future. Like, do they want to return to the country and go to university there? Because that might be a little bit more challenging. But maybe they want to go to university in another country where homeschooling is legal. And a lot of these universities in homeschool-friendly countries love world schoolers. And they not only love homeschoolers and unschoolers, but especially world schoolers, because the kids have such a rich experience in the world, and they're so global, they're so worldly, and they bring a diverse point of view to the university. So they're very popular. So don't think that you're going to ruin your kids by, being a world schooler. There are many, so think about maybe attending university in a homeschool friendly country, but it's at least good to know the options and be prepared. Now, the homeschooling, world schooling, unschooling kids can take the university admissions exams like the SATs or the IGCSE in UK and Europe and I think Singapore and other countries. So they don't have to go to high school. They can take the test. You can study for the test. You can take the test. If you do well, you can, use it to try to be admitted to university. It is important for parents to keep track, or the student to keep track of what they're learning, especially in the high school years. What is that, 14, 15 to 18? So write it down, you can create your own transcript, put it on a blog, have them blog it, have them put on a Google Drive document. So if you don't want to create your own transcripts, you can register your kids with an umbrella school that is accredited, and they keep track, or you tell them what your kids are doing, then they put them on their transcripts, and eventually you can earn a university a diploma. The one I'm familiar with is called West River Academy. They're great for natural learners, aka unschoolers. They're in California. They have students in over 50 countries, so you don't have to be American. They've also been around since the late 90s, so they're pretty legit. Also, you can start your kids in a community college, either in person or online. There's online community colleges. You can dual enroll as a high school student or a homeschooler in these community colleges. And again, there are some online versions, so you don't have to be there. This is what a lot of World School teens that I know do. They will enroll, I think Arizona University has a program. There's a bunch of them. Oregon State, I will have to come up with a list where you can earn credits also for university, and you're getting grades. So that's a third-party validation, which when you hopefully transfer, if you want to transfer to a four-year university, that will work great. And let's see, so the community college dual enrollment, you can start, I think, when you're around 16. There's one in my mom's area, which has a cinematography, graphic design, and animation program. It's a 2-year program. So one of my daughters is thinking about that, entering when she's 16. But now again, they told us, because I checked with them, her English and math have to be at college level, community college level. But so that's her motivation to finally do math. Once the kids have a goal, then they will learn those things to get there. So yeah, I would recommend trying to figure out the different options, try to schedule a meeting or have an email exchange with these schools and find out what are the requirements, and then just kind of reverse engineer it. And also, your kids may not even want to go to college. There's so much you can learn nowadays from schools. A lot of colleges, not the Ivy League, the top ones, but a lot of the mid-tier, they're losing enrollment. They're shrinking. Some colleges are closing because they no longer have the monopoly on information and knowledge. You can learn so much online nowadays. And there's lots of, programs and apps and online university kind of programs. So you can learn a lot from the internet. Some of them are free or cheap. I think MIT has a lot of programs online for free. And
Harvard and Yale too.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you need that diploma? Obviously, a lot of the reasons to go to an Ivy League is to have the networking, right, of having your fellow alumni club. But, nowadays you can learn how to network online through LinkedIn, and, getting involved with the industry you're wanting to get involved in, showing up to conferences around the world. So there's different ways to make connections that can help you.
Yeah. And so I have one more question for you, and we're going to wrap it up soon. But the last question that I have is, what kind of options do you think there are for future careers for world schoolers, and what other learning opportunities are out there? You just sort of touched on that, but what do you think about future careers for world schoolers? What do you think this is giving them?
Yeah, again, we've talked about internships and apprenticeships. Sometimes you have to show up. Sometimes you can find an online internship. Again, with the internet, many of the parents who are world schooling are working online. So, you kind of already know it gives you freedom of location and time and all that. So I think a lot of kids are looking into, being a film editor or virtual assistant, or, those kind of online jobs, writing articles, being a blogger. You can start a business, you can learn a skill. I think as a teen, it's a really great idea to learn a marketable skill while you're a teen and try it and fail and pick yourself up and go again. You can try to attend universities in Europe if you want to, other parts of the world. You can try to get a job, a physical job, but be careful, because if your teen tries to work in a country where they don't have a work permit, then they can, if they get caught by immigration, you can get deported. So be careful about that. I mean, you can volunteer for sure, but be careful about getting a job. So there's so many different ways to do it. Again, I'm hoping my kids will grow up to be tech savvy entrepreneurs. I mean, they're very creative, so they'll probably have some type of artistic, creative type of business or freelance or whatnot. They may or may not go to university. So I think there's so many options, but again, as a parent, I have a little influence now, but as an unschooler, I let them make their choices, and one of them might want to stay in our hometown and open up a flower shop. So who knows? I think, again, the important thing is to learn how to learn, because when the next thing comes, because we don't know what's coming down the future, they'll be able to jump in and learn it. They won't have to go to a university, get a university degree to do that job. So I think having the flexibility, that would be my advice for the future world schoolers. And, obviously a language is great. Learning technology is handy, and just pursuing their passion. So they will figure it out there.
I totally agree. And university is not for everybody. And I think some people may be offended, but I feel the university degree is antiquated at this point.
Yeah.
So,
And I think you and your kids have to think, like, what do you want for their future? Like, what are they envisioning? And, what do they hope for? And whether or not they might want to go to university or work for a corporation and, only get 3 weeks of vacation a year. Is that what they want to do? Or would they rather be freelancers or entrepreneurs, or, just getting a remote job, being a coder and getting paid really well, and, having the freedom to work where they want. And then maybe instead of working 80 hours a week, they could cut their hours down to 20 or 30. I mean, as a traveler, you don't have to work full time. You don't have to make, high income kind of incomes. You can, do well on half of that in some countries. So I think it depends on if they want to be a digital nomad or stationary, and they don't have to figure it all out at 18 or 20. They can try things and figure it out as things go on. Just learn to learn.
I love that. I absolutely support that. All right, Liz. So tell us where people can find you and about the project that you're working on now.
Sure. Well, you probably know that I'm now very passionate about Worldschooling, having done it for 6 years. So I really want to share this kind of information. I'm especially interested in all the different ways kids can learn as world schoolers. So I'm launching a 12-week program in January to help parents, especially newbie parents, to learn how to travel the world in world school. So, they and their kids can become global citizens and live with passion and all that good stuff, make their dreams come true. That's happening in January, and I launched a Facebook group. It's got a bunch of words: Worldschooling, traveling, digital nomad, trailblazing families. The business is called Trailblazing Families. So if you see that, or you can find me on Facebook, I have some free resources. I have a similar talk to this one. I also have the 235 income ideas to fund family travel and world schooling. I first gave that presentation to a virtual summit that Lainey hosted a few years ago. So I have that as in a PDF form. So reach out to me if you want that. And Lainey, you have a great resource and website and your summits. I have other friends who have books and blogs and YouTube channels. So I guess my program starting in January will be live. So I will be doing Facebook Lives, and there's going to be Zoom, Q&A and accountability sessions. I'm going to have lots of interviews of World School service providers and other World School families, and kind of be there to hold everyone's hand a little bit more and be there live certain times of the week. And there'll be probably over 30 hours of live content. And so it's kind of a group, and you stay a member forever. And I'm just going to create a lot of content, answer all those typical questions, help with the getting over the fear of living this crazy lifestyle, but wonderful lifestyle. So yeah, that's what I'm starting, called Trailblazing Families. So please reach out to me.
I love that. And I'm going to invite you to put your links into the chat. There's been quite a few people that have commented, no questions per se, but a lot of people have been watching, and absolutely everybody in this community really appreciate the time that you've given to us today, Liz. So thank you. And guys, I totally recommend checking out Liz's program, especially if you're just starting out. And I happen to know that the price is low because this is your pilot program for the first one. And it's a wonderful opportunity to work with Liz and get the support and launch with confidence.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I
there
want to
you
help
go.
people have the confidence. And again, I selfishly want more world schoolers out there so we have more people to hang out with.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to end the live. And thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Lainey, so much for this great opportunity. I love chatting with you.
My pleasure.